They don't want you to know this. They are addicted. You see artists like Kanye, Drake, JID, Kendrick Lamar, producers like Conductor Williams, Derringer, Southside. For the past 30 years, they've been known to go extreme lengths. And it's not just the sound alone, but what actually brought these records into fruition. We're gonna cover mixing techniques, instrumentation, and the exact mindset to create your most authentic samples in this dark style, man. So other than that, let's go ahead and get this breakdown. Check me out. The money question is, how do we actually get this dark sound? So let's cover a little bit of context. We want to use things like dissonance, tension, different places that we can enforce this uneasy feeling in our samples. Number one being the instrumentation. Respecting the time that these melodies were made, they stuck to only a few core instruments. You see things like pianos, keys, strings, lush, powerful vocals. And as promised, I got you with the VSTs. Off rip, we got Omnisphere. You can't go wrong. They have some amazing keys. One of my favorites is this mono piano. Trillion is like a go-to. Rickenbacker from Contact. You can even use the default Boo Boo bass. This next plugin, I've been using it a lot. And it's from UAD. It's this Rhodes plugin that they have. Super lush, super smooth. We have Analog Lab. This is good for things like synths. One of the most solid bundles that you can get. And speaking of bundles, this one is a sleeper. Zenology. Now, Roland has a bunch of good plugins you can use. If you're making vintage samples, if you got something from Roland, just know you still good. You still good. But in this video and all of my videos, man, I want to let you know that you make the music and not the other way around. You don't need expensive gear to get amazing ideas. So if you've been saying that like, yo, I'm making these samples, but they just don't sound vintage, you don't want to get finessed by the label. They have a signature sound because of the limitations and constraints that force these records to become. So I want you to find one word or one rule or technique and stick just to that one thing, not two, just one. It's instantly gonna give you direction and clarity. With the context of this video being a dark vintage sample, that one word is going to be constraint. Every single decision that we make, I want you to ask yourself, how is constraint playing a part? So let's go into how we can build this sound from the ground up. Anything can be a foundation. We're looking for two things, direction and emotion. Does it make me feel something? And is it pulling me closer to the context wherever I want the finished idea to go? For the foundation, we started off with these roads. This being dark, I wanted to lean on something that feels a little bit more creepy, dreamlike, and nostalgic. Just by having the right direction and context, it'll give you clarity so you can isolate all the instruments that don't make the cut with the characteristics that you want out of your sample. To get that dark sound, you want to stick to using minor chords. This right here is a major. Sounds mad happy. We don't want that. This is a minor. This is always gonna work. If you take a minor chord, drop it down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, chef's kiss. So we're building this progression off of just these two chords. Do we have direction? Yes, and we get the emotional benefits from it. So now you might be saying, how can I take my basic chords to something that sounds better? There's two things that I want you to look at: space and velocity. Those two things alone is what separates good from great, basic, ingenious, amateur to advanced. You can see at the bottom that I'm very organic with the velocity. I played all of these by hand. You know, you could play something like this. How hard I'm pressing these notes is half of the story itself. When I'm using Rhodes, and it gives us that lush feeling that we're looking for. If you want that authentic sound, we need to humanize our melody. For this, I use space by delaying my notes to give it a more lush feeling and also hold more emotional weight. It sounds so organic that it almost sounds lazy, but it's not about what we do, but the direction we're going. Same notes, two completely different stories. And I chose to choose that delayed theme throughout every single chord. So if you're trying to make vintage samples, but it doesn't sound how you actually want it, ask yourself, how am I using space? How is the velocity telling a story? And what direction am I actually going? With a solid foundation, it allows you to be confident and pinpoint what your sample is actually missing. But what this sample needs is a bass. When the bass moves, you move. The next thing I did was I added this vintage percussion to get an authentic sound in your samples. You can see that the bass is using the same note, but two different octaves. We're able to continue to have the listener guessing for what's next. Just like that, we enforce rhythm, we enforce movement, we enforce structure in our sample. So if you find yourself saying like, bro, I'm moving, I'm making progress, but it's like I'm hitting a roadblock, I don't know what elements or instruments to actually commit to. The first thing us creatives are gonna do is create. So we just start slapping stuff open and stick, and I get it. But with a simple reframe, I can help you create your best music and eliminate that friction. So check me out. I want you to completely change how you see music. And I want you to think about instruments as roles. You're the creator and you're creating your whole entire world. And I want you to think of these instruments as certain roles in your plot. Every single sample, instrument, decision, it has to have a purpose. And we're making solid progress. You might be saying like, bro, something is still missing. So the issue is that your sample doesn't need more. It doesn't need more instruments. It doesn't need more texture. It needs the right support. So looking at this with support, I approach this just with 3 simple layers. At this point, our goal is not to create a focal point, but get the emotional benefits of adding something without it being in the way. Without a solid foundation, we would not have even been able to discover these notes as an actual option. What I'm doing is complementing the chords, the movement, to actually control where you want the listener to pay attention to. Vintage samples, they're known for holding emotion, having body, so this cinematic string is doing a lot of work. And speaking of support, if you like these breakdowns, man, make sure you drop a sub. Join the militia of musicians becoming a one-man army, man. I want you to be able to spread your arms like these, man. I want to be able to do this and show up for you as much as I can. And check me out. This is a key factor that makes your melodies, your beats, super addictive to artists. You know you have something good when it's catchy, simple, and repetitive. You got those 3 things, you cooking with hot grease. So how can we enforce something memorable, catchy, and simple in our melodies and get listeners hooked? Now, there's one technique when done right always does the trick. When it comes to B sections, it'll automatically add character and another part where the listener can attach to. And for a B section to work, we want to choose a pattern that already supports the idea and choose an instrument that does the same. I wanted to keep that cinematic feeling, so for the B section, we added these strings. We're using call and response to respect tension, also build up the emotion where their attention is gonna land. A B section should support the same story but provide an alternate perspective for making a whole world. This is where the villain has his chance to get introduced. For a B section, you want to replace the dominant melody. Now the listener has no choice but to gravitate towards that part when it comes in. Now that we made some serious progress in the sample, this is where this one thing matters the most. Anything that holds your attention, what makes or breaks it, is how it is told. Every single great movie, every single great speech, even songs, they have moments that pull you in and moments that let you breathe. There's highs and there's lows. And music, it works the same way. So how can we apply this into especially these dark vintage samples? It's gonna come down to these two things: dynamics and purpose. Dynamics as the highs and the lows that guide the listener and their emotions. And with purpose, it makes sure that every single element is actually supporting the idea that you're building. And up to this step, we built it from scratch. We see it from the foundation. So now we know exactly what the sample needs and what it's missing. One thing that you'll hear over and over again in these authentic vintage records are gonna be vocals. Any genre, vocals can add dynamics, identity, memorability, and also emotional storytelling. This can instantly add that addictive factor to your samples. We want to respect the constraints and still add on to that story. Next addition that I added were these vocals.
Sirens calling, sirens calling.
Completely different sample just by adding that. Now here's the mindset shift to create your best work, and especially shows up when adding vocals. Creativity, or the things you make, is a direct reflection of the standards that you have about yourself. So when creating, you're gonna run into your ego. If you're creating with your ego, your ideas are gonna sound crowded, not intentional. There's not gonna be a main focal point, and you're gonna be like, bro, am I trash? So when adding vocals, it's best to reframe it as a voice, not a lead vocal, not lyrics, just a voice. So with these vocals just being like a placeholder, we're looking for purpose over the actual thing that we're adding. I'll show you how purpose and dynamics play the biggest role in making this idea sound better. I approached it in 4 different intentions or 4 different layers. I started off with these staccato oohs.
Wow. Ooh.
I wanted these to capture attention, so they're short, they're staccato. In music terms, this is what a staccato means, but it's like an exclamation point. As soon as it grabs the attention, it releases it just as quick. So these will hold the most attention out of all of these vocals, and the rest are supporting a different thing.
Bang, 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 bang. Sirens calling,
And she went
my
bang,
name.
bang, bang,
Sirens calling,
Went
my
bang.
name.
Bang,
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 bang, bang, bang, bang,
she's
bang,
calling
bang,
my
bang,
name.
So if you're saying if your vocals are not the best, here's the exact mindset to create stacks just like this. You want to hold the note as long as possible and let the vibrato naturally happen at the end. In no way, shape, or form am I a vocal coach, but you got to turn your disadvantages to your advantage. I taught myself to better my vocals by experimenting with chest voice, head voice, vocal fry, different techniques to add flavor. If you add vocals in your samples and you want to know some cool techniques, I'll put a vocal tutorial right here so you can check that out. And honestly, you don't need to be a great singer. You just need to have an idea that is worth supporting. Now I'm gonna solo just these vocals, and I want you to pay attention to how it's adding dynamics and guiding the emotion of the listener through highs and lows. Purpose and direction gives us everything else that we need to add. And for this sample, for this context, it just happened to be vocals. Whatever you're using is always going to be a mask for the intention or why you're choosing it. And I know you're here for one reason: to make your best authentic dark samples. You want to create something that actually sounds realistic. So if you're creating your samples and you're saying, man, it still sounds fake, it's because you're missing one of the most important things in expression and music. So with this, you want to look past the focal point, look past the notes, look past the melodies, and ask yourself, how can I make it feel like this actually existed somewhere? Life lies in the environment. Authentic recordings, they capture more than just the instruments. They capture mic bleed, they capture background noise, movement, the air. The more that you build what's around it, the environment, the more potential anything else has to come to it. This really clicked for me when I was listening to this gospel record. I kept asking myself, why does this just cut through the soul? Why am I feeling this? That it wasn't just the choir, but it was everything around them, the people behind them, people worshiping their hearts out, harmonizing in the background, someone holding a note. If you only focus on the choir, you'll miss the entire moment. So with this mindset and philosophy to creating, the next thing that I did was added things strictly to build the environment.
Yeah. I've been.
It's not for attention, it's for context. When you remove them, your sample will lose its sense of place and existence. They convince your ear that what you're making actually exists somewhere. And that's gonna be the difference between, you know, a bland story and an authentic world or a full sample that you're creating. So now we're at the point where we got the solid idea. And if you're saying my ideas aren't translating, this is where the mix comes into play. Now, once you fully understand what actually will allow you to create your best vintage melodies, that's where mixing will stop becoming about polishing and actually refining something to fit your taste. It will help you mold the record into what it needs to be. And these are not VSTs, but these two things will change your mix forever: organization and placement. Organization allows you to group instruments instead of being individual decisions, but as roles and units. If they're a main vocal, they'll go to these main vocals. All of my oohs, they get mixed a certain way. Same thing with my accent vocals. Organization allows you to get different stages of control in your mix. Placement is how everything is actually sounding, where it sits. It comes down to presence and panning. So now we're in the mix, man. I'll go ahead and show you all of my mixer channels. You know, everything is pretty basic. I might use no more than 3 to 4 plugins. You know, everything is really simple. Even my master is pretty simple. I want to show you how we're able to use these tools to communicate our emotions in a direction that we want. There's two main effects for mixing. We got EQ and compression. Reverb and delay, those are like the sprinkles, the pretty stuff. So I'm gonna roll a little clip explaining the difference between delay and reverb, and also how we can use it in our production. If you want your samples to be addictive, you need to know how to control a listener's attention. With compression, we force these ideas forward in the mix, making them a main character or focal point. For the strings, we had no choice but to add more body. We also did the same technique on the Rhodes to pull it more forward in the mix, helping it be a main idea so that we could build everything else around it. One of my favorite VSTs that help communicate vintage qualities in our sample is gonna be RC20. You see, I use RC20 in like everything, bro. The EQ is amazing. I like to use this crunch preset, also giving it natural drops. You can see my main vocals. I'm just adding some distortion, some saturation. I'm cutting out some of the lows with RC20, adding a compressor. You see I'm using mono reverb. For the drums, I wanted to solidify movement, reinforce tempo, all of that good stuff. So I'm controlling the high end frequency. I want it to be subtle, but still heard. Added a little bit of distortion and saturation. Now I'm gonna show you these I vocals. You see, we just using RVox, got some compression. This gate here is taking out all the background noise that we don't want. I have compression just gluing these things together so that they sit cohesively. RC20 again. You can see how much frequencies we don't actually even need. I want these vocals to sit over the main melody and not replace it. With this space, I'm just adding a little bit of stereo separation, again playing with presence and positioning. And I want to show you a quick reference of how we can model our mixes after actual records. All right, so let's go ahead and cover the master. If you A to B your master and it sounds completely different, you're doing something wrong. You either chose the wrong instruments, you mix things too quiet, but you don't want to try and polish bad decisions. For the master, we got this SSL EQ, taking out pretty much everything under 52 Hertz. I want to keep the fullness of the bass and still have this not sound muddy. Got the low frequencies, low mids, high mid frequencies. Next thing I have is this UAD hits fill, one of my go-tos. This adds a little bit more fullness and tone to the sample. Now this is a stereo imager. What it does is it allows you to control the stereo field. Most modern sounds, they're gonna come stereo, super polished, super high quality. And if you wanna create something vintage that sounds authentic, it's actually hurting you. So with this S1 imager, we actually shrunk the stereo field, making everything sit in one cohesive room. Abbey Road's J37, I got it on this 7.5. Just a little bit of noise, just a little bit of noise. You can see this is the preset I used. We got RC20, everything is disabled. All that I'm using this for is just the natural ducks that we can hear in vintage records. So here's how you can actually apply everything that you learned from this video. Choose one word and stick by it. For this example, it was constraint. Mixing is about positioning. When you understand presence and placement, your end goal will fall right into your hands. If you ask yourself these 3 questions, it'll force you and your melodies to instantly level up. You want to be clear and ask yourself, why am I adding this sound? Question number 2, what is the intention? What do I actually want to get out of it? And the last question is this actually pulling me closer to context? Is this adding to the plot or taking away? And if the answer you have is not clear, it gets cut. Simple. Utilize dynamics and purpose to make your ideas sound better. And the next time that you want to create something authentic, ask yourself, how is life existing outside of the focal point, outside of the chords, outside of the note choices? How did I produce identity into my sample? You know, it's not going to be more layers, it's not going to be more plugins. By having a clear emotional direction and choosing decisions that all respect that. That is how you build your most addictive and authentic sounding dark vintage melodies, man. So check it. If you want these resources and all the other resources in the videos that we drop, I'll leave a link to my open source library. When you get the index, all you got to do is just find the video or find whatever you're looking for, and it's right there waiting for you all in one spot. Check me out. The energy been flowing. Our most recent single was Broken Dreams, but we got some bangers coming up, so you can stream all my music under this name. So be on the lookout for Pro Tools tutorials. Make sure you check out SVRGE Production. It's an ecosystem for developing creatives. It has the tools and resources for you to create your most competitive work with clarity and confidence. Now, if you're still saying like, dog, I'm doing what I can and I'm still not getting the sound that I want, I'm adding things. I done bought new VSTs, bro, 1,000 hours of YouTube, and I'm still not getting that sound out of my samples that have people addicted and hooked. What I do is curated development for serious creators. I help artists learn to record and teach producers how to level up the production without expensive gear, music theory, through philosophy, decisions, and real application. And if you're ready to move forward, I'll leave an application link in the description. Or if you got your IG open, you can just DM me one-on-one and we can see if curated development is actually the right next step for you. We're here to inspire creatives to use their God-given gifts and talents to create their legacy, make life their canvas. I'ma roll this unreleased, but other than that, it's your boy Surge, man. We out.
I would bring a rain just to see your smile blooming. Tell you all the time that it's safe to chase the moon. Line my mind and heart, baby, we can stay in tune. My summers never end by the way you change the room.